of the epic of creation, their story very closely parallels our modern understanding of how our solar system came about. Next slide, please. So the story, as told by the Sumerians, is that this Nibiru, as Zecharia Sitchin calls it, an intruding planet, was pulled into the inner part of our solar system and actually whacked a primitive planet where the asteroid belt is now, called Tiamat. Next slide, please. So looking at the diagram here, we see Planet X, or Nibiru, in the bottom. Planet X's trajectory actually would have taken it not even anywhere near us, but it got pulled in by the influence of the outer planets, and when in doing so, came across the orbit of our then primitive Earth called Tiamat. Next slide, please. What happened was, in the process of doing that, it didn't whack our planet, but the moon, actual moons of Nibiru, hit our planet and strewed out the asteroid belt, moving the then Tiamat into a new orbit, creating our Earth. Next slide, please. Planet X, or Nibiru, went on to continue to have a 3,600-year orbit around our sun. The Sumerians also depicted the orbit of Nibiru as a shar. They called the orbit of Nibiru a shar, a completed circle, which was very interesting because even today, through mathematics, a completed circle, 360 degrees, 3,600-year orbit, there's many overlapping coincidences. Another thing I'll point out, we're talking about this idea that there's a 12th planet. The Sumerians said that there was 12 planets in our solar system. There's a lot of symbology that we can learn from the Sumerian information. And again, I can't touch on all of it tonight, but just to give you an idea, this sacred number 12, 12 planets, well, there are 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 disciples of Jesus, the 12 Greek Olympians, 12 months in a year, 12 hours in a day, 12 inches in a foot. I can keep going. All of this information that we've learned through science and medicine, mathematics, time, all of this was bequeathed to us by the Sumerians, and we're still using it. Next slide, please. So I thought this was really intriguing because, again, some of the latest models and theories. 2 weeks ago on the Discovery Channel, there was a show called If the Earth Had No Moon. I'm not sure if anyone saw that, but very interestingly, they promoted this idea called the Orpheus theory, that this rogue planet, came into our solar system, whacked our primitive Earth, and in the process made this debris field, which then eventually coalesced into our moon. Now, again, all the current models for how our solar system and Earth came to be, they don't all add up. So there's new interjections coming in all the time as to how this took place, how our Earth formed, how the solar system formed 4 billion years ago. Interestingly enough, the Sumerians, again, had this story written down, and here we go again with some of the latest models coming out in science, collaborating, confirming what the Sumerians said thousands of years ago. Next slide, please. So this is kind of my own interpretation that I found very intriguing, that if Nibiru did actually, in the 4 billion year range ago, 4 billion years ago or so, whack our primitive Earth, leaving it to just be half a planet. Next slide, please. We do have a theory that's well accepted of Pangaea, that at one time in the primordial past, our planet, when it had just finished coalescing, was basically just a chunk of land. And it was, through continental drift over time, millions of years, that eventually the plates spread like an apple skin. They kind of loosely moved to where they are now. But if this idea of a Pangaea was correct, and we think about this, if you siphon off all the water, it's just half a planet. Water siphons into a sphere on hyperdimensional levels of planets, or however that works. All planets are round, but if you remove all the water, you have half a planet. Next slide, please. So that's a pretty interesting correlation, again, just showing that they still teach this today, that if you move all the pieces together, it looks like they all fit, and that's the hypothesis of Pangaea. At one point, all the continents were connected. Again, another confirmation that the Sumerians were saying we were once half a planet. It does seem to be an interesting coincidence. Next slide, please. Again, just showing that all the pieces do in fact fit if allowed for continental drift. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick thing that I'll throw in there because I know it's a topic that if people are involved in this information have heard. Will Planet X be killing us or passing by in the year 2003? I personally do not subscribe to this theory, and I only bring this information up really to show that the doomsday scenarios, I'm only 29, and in the time the few years, 9 years or so that I've been involved in the ufology research, there have been a lot of doomsday scenarios, from Hale-Bopp to the planetary alignment of 9 planets, to new layouts as far as the Earth being covered with water, and a new map being formed by our continents or whatever. I really take this information with a grain of salt. As I stated earlier, with the astronomical community, the amateur astronomy community, if something is coming in, we're going to see it. Now, how that would play out, if it would be covered up, I don't know. But the point is that we have enough technology in place. You can go out and buy your own catadioptric lens telescope, look up there every night, and see things, and be able to track objects. So if there is an inbound threat, that's not to say that there couldn't be an asteroid or something else, which we'll touch on in a moment. But if there was an object as large as a Planet X, next slide, we'd be very clear to be able to see it. So the only thing I would say is that the rumors circulating the internet of our demise this year by a Planet X, rest assured, or at least in my opinion, that we are still currently trying to authenticate and prove the existence of a Planet X, let alone to say when it's going to return and what effects it will have. All we can do at this point, without too much speculation, is go off the information that we have, which mostly, through Zecharia Sitchin's work, we've translated the understanding of the events of the Sumerians and their knowledge of this celestial planet, or a Nibiru. Next slide, please. So this is just a simple mathematical calculation, just roughly showing loosely that, and this diagram shows that where our asteroid belt is, there is actually enough room, if you look between Mars and Jupiter, based on the other distribution of the planets, for another planet to pass very freely within that space. So I just point out that if Nibiru does have a 3,600-year orbit, and it initially had an interaction with Earth roughly 4.7 billion years ago, a simple mathematical calculation shows us that it's passed Earth roughly over 1 million times, so that it's possible, again, I'm speculating, but it's possible that each time Nibiru passes us, it doesn't always cause effects on Earth. Next slide, please. So, not to say that we don't have a threat from space, again, just covering the idea that, in my opinion, Planet X really is, whether we'll even see it in our lifetime, boy, that would be interesting. There are the possibilities of threats from space. Next slide, please. One of the very interesting theories, which I'll discuss in a moment, is the nemesis theory, and that something killed off the dinosaurs. A large comet possibly struck the Yucatan Peninsula and wiped out the dinosaurs. And several scientists developed a theory called the nemesis theory, one Richard Mueller specifically, and plotted that actual soil samples and looking at layered sediment showed that there were, over millions of years, a repetitive global extinction event taking place. They theorized. Now, their theory was at millions of years, not at 3,600 years, but still an interesting assertion. Next slide, please. And to say that we don't have threats from space, this is, boy, my little video isn't playing there again. This is just showing that when we had Shoemaker-Levy 9 enter our solar system, it broke up into 9 large fragments that impacted Jupiter by, you can see the dark spots or the infrared, the bright objects there on the side. Now, at the time, never a straight answer from NASA, said, oh, nothing to see, to the astronomical amateur community. Nothing to see, it's not going to cause any damage to Jupiter, the minimal impacts. Okay. Well, these little dots, these dark dots, can hold 4 to 8 Earths in just those little dots. So the impacts taking place on Jupiter, if Jupiter, thank God, had not diverted and had the gravitational pull to pull this stuff in, which it does in a case with a lot of comets and asteroids in our solar system, these fragments can whack us. And if they do, it could be an issue. Next slide, please. And like we've seen in the movies like Armageddon and Deep Impact, or heard in the news like 2028, an asteroid could come and kill us, there is a significant need to survey the sky on a consistent basis. One of the programs we have, NEAT, Near Earth Asteroid Telemetry, I'm not sure the exact, but the NEAT project basically is tracking, and they say, an interview with one of these scientists says that the number of employees to staff one McDonald's is less than the total amount used to track Earth-threatening objects. So that does, somewhat alarm me. I will say on a side note that my personal beliefs with our technology as an Earth civilization, my personal beliefs are that we're well advanced than we're being told, and that if there was an Earth-threatening object, such as an asteroid like we're seeing here, that we would have the ability to divert it. How or with what assistance, I'm only speculating.